I don't feel sorry for builder and say this is the way the industry is, because I've seen too often that builders can go from very poor positions to extremely strong positions that create reputations that are lasting.
Greetings, one and all. Jeff Shore back with you on the Builder365 podcast, the podcast where we celebrate all things home building. If you're enjoying the podcast, please share, let people know, put it out there on social. That's how we want the marketing to work here, just all by word of mouth. Welcoming back to the co-hosting chair, Mr. Ryan Taft. Ryan, how you doing?
I am doing absolutely fabulous. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Yeah.
Well, yeah. By the time we record this, you actually will be you'll be in France, it looks like.
That's correct. I'm not actually here right now. I am in France. At the time everybody is hearing this, I am already in France. I'm on sabbatical, but we pre-record these. So by the time this episode's released, we'll have just landed in Paris. Then we'll take a train to Annecy in the foot of the French Alps, not too far from Geneva, and then just have a good time tootling around France. I'm excited.
You're going to have to let me know all the good spots, because that is on our hit list for sure.
Well, I'll send you my notes. I know we have similar travel tastes. In fact, our combined hot tip, I'll let you share it. Where do people need to go, Ryan?
San Sebastian in Spain is absolutely, and we've got the hookup for the tour guide of tour guides. I feel like every one of us at Shore has done some time in San Sebastian, so it's one of my hot spots.
It is true. There are three of us on the Shore Consulting team that have all been to San Sebastian on a culinary food tour with a culinary expert. And the highest concentration of Michelin-rated restaurants in the world are in San Sebastian, the Basque country. The people are wonderful, scenically gorgeous, and the food. Oh my word, the food! Which is interesting, right? Because you're sort of a purist on the food. You like what you like, but you had to get a little out of the box when you went to San Sebastian.
There's no doubt about that one. I'm kind of a meat and potatoes kind of guy. I don't go too far outside of my zone. I feel a little bit like, Hitch teaching Kevin James how to dance. I don't do a whole lot of outside of the box stuff, but when you go to some of these places, you got to be willing to get out of the box a little bit. Otherwise, why go? So I did. Yeah. And it was there was things I really enjoyed, and then there were other things I was like, I'm good.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is a beautiful, beautiful place. No question about it. I want to give a special thanks to our partner for this podcast. Builder365 is powered by Open Door for Builders. Easy sales, smooth moves. You can learn more about the work that they do to support home builders at opendoor.com/builder365. So, one of the things that's interesting as we're kind of watching the market and what's going on out there right now, is just trying to figure out what are people putting as a down payment on homes these days. And it's interesting that, Ryan, you and I lived through a time where a lot of buyers went, down payment, you need a down payment? I didn't know you needed a down payment. We went through a time where if you put a down payment on a house, people looked at you like you were some sort of weirdo. Those were very, very strange days, weren't they?
Oh yeah. I had a biker come in, and he put down $250. That was what he put down. He put down $250 to get on contract, and I think we got him money back. Actually, I think he made money on the transaction.
Weird days. Now you need a down payment. The question is how much of a down payment you need. So we'll just ask you the question, Ryan. Let's say 5%. What would you say was the average size of a down payment on a home in the United States? Just take a guess here. What do you think?
Well,
within 5%.
My instinct wants to say 20, because that's just smart, but I doubt it with the inflation where we're at right now. So I'm gonna hope that people put more than what I might guess. So I'm gonna go a little high. I'm gonna say 15%.
I said get it within 5%, and we're going to give you credit for that one. The average down payment at 13.6%. 13.6% is the average down payment. It's an interesting discussion because when we look at down payment, it's a real barrier to home ownership, and we look at what customers are having to go through in order to come up with that down payment at the prices that we're at today. And it's interesting, Ryan, because you and I hear a lot about the objections that home buyers have about the monthly payment, but I have to believe that coming up with a down payment is equally as daunting for a first time buyer today as to try and figure out how to swing a payment that's $1,000 or more larger than you thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I think it compounds, right? I mean, it's one thing to have the payment shock, but then to say, well, gosh, how much do I have to come up with? So when we think of like buyers and what might cause them to not purchase, it's the compounding of both that monthly payment and that down payment. And so anything you can do to combat that between understanding how their life needs to improve, and of course, any programs and things that your preferred lender has are going to help mitigate that and lower that cost sphere. So it's a real thing for sure.
It is, and it's difficult. And yet the statistics are there that those people who own a home are financially better off in the long run. So you do what you have to do. I'm not sure there was ever a time when people were really happy with either their down payment or their monthly payment when they were buying a home. It's always been stressful. It's always been burdensome. But it just feels more and more given where the prices are right now. So any advice on that, Ryan, for how somebody, whether it's a salesperson, a builder, a warranty rep who's talking to a customer can kind of give people the assurance that, hey, what you're doing is okay?
Yeah, so there's boy, we could do a whole thing just on this, but you just nailed one piece of it, which is there isn't anyone who's ever been excited about their payment or whatever it is in history. I mean, even if you go back to when people were spending, $60,000 for a very nice home, they're like, "Oh my gosh, 60." So it's always in context that it doesn't matter when you buy, you're going to have that. But the other piece of it is that historically, when you look at folks that stay in their homes for a long enough period, they're always happy they made the decision. I've never heard the regret on that. I've always heard the regret on we wish we would have, we wish we would have. So there's
Yeah.
a piece of that. And then the biggest piece of the puzzle is what we say is rule number one. And Jeff, what is rule number one?
Live in the right home.
And so if they don't, and they're coming to see us to possibly make a move, then that Warren Buffett quote is so true. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. So don't just have a value conversation, or a pricing conversation, have a value conversation. How does their life
Right.
improve? Because we're not selling homes, we're selling life improvement. If you get that,
Yeah.
that frames the conversation much differently.
I think it makes a lot of sense because when you could look at the price as this big onus, this burden that comes on you every single month. But when you look around the home, that's where the real value comes into play. This is how it's improving my life. Well, that's improved even more when there's a great experience attached to it. So it's my great joy to welcome our special guest for this particular podcast. Bob Mirman is the CEO of Eliant, a customer experience research organization. He is a longtime industry veteran and one of the most respected voices in the industry on customer experience. Bob and I have collaborated on stuff over the year, and that culminated with this book right here, Contract to Close, From Contract to Close, which released late last year. It's a book about the journey of two home buyers that are buying in communities that are next to each other. One has a great experience, one not so much. It's written to track their story and to pull the lessons out of that story. It was great to collaborate with Bob. I think you'll enjoy this conversation with industry legend Bob Mirman. Always good to talk to my friend Bob Mirman. Bob, you're quite the world traveler. Where are you now? Where were you last? And
Jeff,
where are
you
you
always
going
ask
next?
the most complicated questions. Well, I'm at home in North Carolina in Pinehurst, where we moved about 4.5 years ago. Loving it here.
Right.
And
Yeah.
recent trips have been to Italy and places that you like to go, I'm sure, and are headed for.
Yeah. Right. Where were you in
Well,
Italy
we went
last?
to, that was back in October. We went to the Ryder Cup match in Rome, and then visited some of the islands off the Naples shore. Had a great time there. I loved it. And the only thing I didn't do was to go down and visit the southern part of Italy, which I really want to do next time. So, have you been there?
Well, interestingly enough, last September we were in Rome. We had been in Croatia. We went over to Rome, and then we went to the southern part.
Yeah,
We went to Taormina
yeah.
In Sicily. It was
That's what I want
amazing,
to do. We're
incredible.
also
Yeah,
going I've been to Colorado
love
once
it.
this year already, do a golf tournament, and
Yeah,
we're going back there
yeah.
in about 6 weeks again. Love Colorado.
Love it, love it. Tell the people about your early days in the real estate business. Give us your builder story, if you will.
Well, I got in it quite by accident, you might say. I wasn't planning on going into the building industry, but I had just left General Mills after 7 years as a staff psychologist, and we did some surveys there that were extremely productive and effective. And strangely enough, my then wife worked as a sales rep for Shea Homes in California, where I just had moved from Minneapolis. One of the
Mm-hmm.
best moves in my life, by the way. Um, and I had put together a business plan because she had told me that no one was doing anything like I had thought about doing. And I kind of put it in my drawer and it was sitting there. And then Dana Kovac called me from Hubbard Advertising, where she was working as the advertising agency for Shea Homes, and asked me, based on a Yellow Pages ad. Remember the Yellow Pages? That's where it all started.
Barely, but go
Surveys,
ahead.
Yellow Page ad for surveys. And Dana Kovac called me and got me together with
Yeah.
John Shea Jr. the next day. And we put
Mhm.
together his first program with the promise that I would do it for free for a year if he called some of his friends and other builders in Southern California to get them to do it as well so we could put together benchmarks. And that's the way it started. And it was quick.
That's that's a great story. And early on in your entrepreneurial career, you think, well, what are my assets? Well, an asset you have early on is time, so you can invest that along. But then, look, as an entrepreneur, you're either adding value or you're not adding value. That's one of the things. Your scorecard comes very, very quickly in the form of there is revenue available or there is not revenue available, and from there you were able to grow regionally and then nationally, and today just without question the gold standard of understanding what your customers are thinking, what their experience is like. When you look at the often pathetic, quite frankly, results the builders get when it comes to their customer experience efforts, I'm kind of curious, how do you react? Is it more, hey, look, this is a tough business, or is it, oh, come on, this is not that hard? How do you react when you see really
It's not
poor
that hard.
results?
I don't feel sorry for builders that don't get it and are not trying enough. I've personally have seen and participated in probably 2 to 3 dozen occasions in which a builder comes in as the last place builder on our list of 220, 250, whatever it is, and they go from worst to first. So, and all they do is they follow our guide. And I'm not taking credit for the whole thing. I'm just saying we have a plan. It's a blueprint. If they follow it, it works. Why come into it with such a negative position and let it go at that? Let it stay there. There's a way to do it. There's some very specific things that can make it happen. So no, I don't. I don't feel sorry for builder and say this is the way the industry is, because I've seen too often that builders can go from very poor positions to extremely strong positions that create reputations that are lasting and make a difference in sales. So,
Do you think that customers themselves, to some extent, are raising the bar? I mean, I look at, like, Will Gudarov, writes this book on reasonable
yeah,
hospitality about the experiences that he put together at 11 Madison Park. We had the chance to eat there last year. It was absolutely amazing. Then there's a whole conference called on reasonable hospitality that goes along with it. You see companies that are right out of the gate, a lot of the startups that are built around these amazing customer experiences. Do you think that there's a cultural wave that is demanding better experiences, or are we just looking at a
no, I don't
recency
think it's a
bias right
recency
there?
bias, Jeff. I buy your argument. I think, by the way, that's my all-time favorite book right now. I must have purchased 100 of those
Oh, it's
books to send
fantastic.
them out to friends. Every time I go to a restaurant that this in which the service does not meet just the minimal standards, I send the owner of that restaurant a book. I've
Right.
done that probably 25 times in the last year. Really, I do it because it's such a wonderful presentation of what's possible. And if you look at the
Yeah.
scores on our surveys that are going up now, and they are, our scores are getting better and better. We're at an all time high this month an all-time high in the customer experience ratings from all of our builder clients. It's never been as high as it is right now. It's never been as low as it was back in 2021 after and during the end of COVID. It was an all-time low. That was 21. Now it's 24. We're at an all-time high. So there is a cultural awakening, if you will, about the importance of this. And they're doing it not because it's a nice thing to do, which of course it is. They're doing it because it actually works to create sales from referrals. Our referral sales are also increasing. Sales from referrals, because we ask that. It's our first question on every evaluation that we do after move-in. Were you referred to this builder by a friend or an associate? So we measure that. It's part of our major metrics. And those numbers are increasing as well. It's almost 1 out of every 4 sales from our clients are from a referral. Some of our clients are hitting 50% or more. We have 2 clients over 50% of their sales from referrals. So it's a significant improvement in the building industry culture over time, and it's only increasing right now.
Well, and it makes your product pay for itself many, many times over. Like you, I am frustrated by those builders that have not really leaned into what a good customer experience looks like,
Yeah,
even on the minimum level, because they're looking to say, well, I can't afford to invest resources in that direction. It's
not,
like, can you afford all of the marketing that's going to take to make up for all
yeah.
of those lost sales, right? Not to mention the fact that the irony about this is that that buyer who has already been referred by somebody who trusts the builder comes through the door with a positive expectation of what's going to happen, and therefore it's easier to hit the benchmarks to be able to make them happy, which spurs another referral, and
Yeah,
it goes
and
on and
they're
on
less
and on,
likely,
right?
those buyers who
It's
come in from a referral are less likely to can when things go a little bit south. It's all
yeah,
part
yeah.
of that process.
Yeah, I've been talking a lot about this concept of relational allegiance. That when there is that bond, when there is that trust, then it's much more difficult to walk away because I do feel a personal connection to the people that I'm talking to. You have summarized a lot of this into very excited the brand new book, Homebuyers Talk, and you and I have spoken in the past. I have, of course, it wasn't that long ago. You and I, well, a copy of it right here, co-authored the book From
Yeah.
Contract to Close. It was a wonderful endeavor to be able to look at how builders do this and do this hopefully right and the perils of doing it wrong. But as we did that, as we were going through that project, I'm always amazed to hear some of the things that buyers have to say. Both in the positive and the negative, and sometimes
Yeah.
the downright humorous. So tell us a little
Are
bit
you
about
giving
the
me a
book.
chance to plug my new book, Jeff? I'll do that.
I
There
am
you go.
indeed. Homebuyers
There it
Talk
is
by
right
Bob
there.
Mirman. There you
It's a
go.
small book. I mean, it's not a big book. It's a small little book. It's an
Yeah,
easy read.
yeah.
And it's designed by my brother Kenny. So it's a little artistic
Mhm.
tome that is a quick read. It's only 100 pages and it's just filled with comments. It's really an extremely entertaining and powerfully educationally designed book because we're using. I didn't write it. I mean, I didn't have to write it. I start off the book by saying, "Hey, I didn't write this book. I didn't have to. Your customers wrote it for me." It's a summary of their comments. We use verbatim comments and just share those positive and negative suggestions that your customers are saying. And my brother and I came up with this concept, and by the way, my brother, as you'll see when you take a look at the inside jacket of this, Kenny is a internationally known artist, film director. He did the original movie Tron. He was on that team that did that, and then he directed the animated sequences in the movie Titanic. So he's got quite a level of experience in art and artistic adventures that I lack. So together we made a pretty good team with my content and his artistic treatise on this. So it's a very beautiful book to look at, and it's easy to read. And I've added my interpretations and a list of best practices at the completion of every chapter. So we have a chapter on sales comments and suggestions and design studio comments and suggestions. And I do my interpretation of those comments as well as lists of best practices. So it's a book that's been written and priced For builders, which they are doing, thankfully, builders are buying this book to hand out to all their field reps as a training implement, and it's working out very well in that manner.
It follows the idea that a when a customer gives you feedback, you can look at it as simply as feedback. Oh, that's interesting. That's what our
Yeah,
customer had to say. Or you could look at
yeah,
it as an education, and that's when the improvements are made. And I don't remember the author of the book, a complaint is a gift,
yeah.
but that is the concept.
Yes,
That's the idea. Customers try to teach you how to run your customer better, and they earn that voice because they just gave you
yeah,
five hundred
yeah. I
thousand
know.
dollars.
Just a
So
small
I
amount.
think they have
But
a right
the
to be able to do
comments
that. Yeah,
themselves, we've picked
exactly.
out the comments that we thought were the most educational as well as entertaining, both positive
Yeah,
and negative. So rather than just saying, here's a comment
yeah,
from
yeah.
Steve Jones in Austin, Texas, that says, "Hey, I was really disappointed in my builder," which doesn't teach us anything. We have comments, and here's one.
Right,
Our sales rep, Karen, was great. She would regularly send us updated photos of our home while it was being construction. How cool is that? Her turnaround response for emails was 1 day or less. So, I mean, that's an educational process and just reading Karen's
right,
comment. And we've tried to pick
right,
out comments that are that way from a positive standpoint and also negative to be educational, to teach sales sales
right.
personnel, construction managers, service managers exactly what it is that buyers are looking for. And that's the specificity of the book.
Well, my all-time favorite buyer comment, of course, from one of your surveys, the finish trim looks like it was installed by beavers. I will never forget that comment. That's one of my favorites. Talk a little bit about because you are a best practice company, right? You're the route to get there is through home buyer surveys, but really what you are is a best practice company. Talk about the practice of immediately sharing customer feedback with field reps. How, whether that's
Mm.
sales, construction, service, whatever it happens to do, but there's an immediacy that's
There's a
critical to
good
what it is
story
that we're
here.
learning here.
I think I mentioned earlier that I was a staff psychologist at General Mills for 7 years with the sales division. We had 1,000 salespeople, and I was responsible for motivational programs and performance evaluations based on performance and different ways to keep exciting our performance year after year as our goals and standards kept improving. And we were held to a higher standard every year. One of the things that we found was that managers were not sharing performance data to the extent that they should have been with the people who were actually creating the sales, the salespeople in the field who are going to Albertsons and Kroger and Safeway and Ralph's to sell all General Mills products. They weren't getting the salespeople weren't getting the information in a timely manner. And when we had sales contests, the provision of information about how you're doing is so critical to the success of the contest or to the success of the year in terms of meeting or beating the quota. And managers were not seeing it in the same way. They weren't sharing it to the same extent. So we took over the job at corporate of providing that information on a much more frequent basis and a much more detailed basis with the people who were out there in the field selling. And we got an immediate surge in performance that was measurable. So when I looked at a few years ago, when we looked at what we were doing, we have all these great reports at Eliant that are detailed and come out every day, and they're all available online, and you can subscribe to the reports. Still, managers that we were saying were not distributing access to these reports on the same basis that we had felt would be important to the success of the builder. So we decided to take on the job and do it ourselves. So we put together an app called Engage, and that every field rep, sales, construction, design, escrow, lending. I mean, every person that touches the buyer, all the customer facing people have access now to this complimentary app on their phones. And every day, whenever we get an evaluation submitted by a buyer, and it's for Steve Jones, the salesperson, Steve Jones gets a copy of that immediately. There's no waiting as they were doing before for months to find out how they're doing so they can adjust their performance. So this has been a significant improvement. And as you look at the companies, our clients, that have subscribed to the app, even though it's free, not everybody has subscribed to it for some reason. They have not done as well if they don't subscribe. So those companies that are subscribing are doing much better because their reps are getting feedback. They can see what the comments are, they can see what their ratings are, they can see their rankings versus all their peers. So if there are 22 salespeople in a given division, they can see where they rank against their other 21 colleagues, and that it's an invaluable feedback.
I do recall very well as a sales representative getting a survey back 45 days after the fact, to the point where all it could do was either elate me or piss me off, but I couldn't do anything. Maybe I didn't learn anything. All right, we're almost out of time. Give our audience a piece of low-hanging fruit. Okay, even if they aren't all in on the customer experience wave, at least they can do this. What is this?
Well, that's an interesting question. Home delivery is one of our lowest rated topics, or it has been traditionally. It's been improving over the last year. But the one, the low hanging fruit in that is that you have three basic sins that builders fall into about home delivery. One is you missed a promise date. The other is you deliver an incomplete home, even though you're promised to deliver it in a complete way. And three, you deliver it unclean. Now, all three of those issues have been climbing. One issue, and I call it the fourth deadly sin about home delivery, is that buyers whose homes have been delayed often end up moving into a home that wasn't cleaned again after the delay period. It may have been cleaned the day before we're supposed to close or whatever, weeks ago or days ago, but then they complain because they figure, hey, you had all this extra time that my home was delayed, and now you're inviting me to move into a home which is unclean. And those people are so much less likely to be willing to refer, even though everything else had gone well. When you deliver an unclean home, particularly when it's to a delayed customer, you're cutting your own throat. So our recommendation has been the night before the final delivery, and it's going to be delivered tomorrow, bring your crew in again, spend $150, $200 to get a crew to come in there, clean the home, make it spotless, avoid the dissatisfaction and the word of mouth that comes from that negative experience. Big time.
Love it. Before we let you go, we'll put you on the hot seat. A few rapid fire questions, rapid fire answers. Ready?
Go.
Here we go. The artist or band you listened to most in high school?
In high school. Well, I tell you what, my favorite band is Chicago, but they weren't around in high school. They were in college, and Sly and the Family Stone. Two of my favorite.
I like it. I like a little disco going on there. The most beautiful place you've ever stood?
I would have to say that's Lake Louise in Canada. You know Lake Louise? You've been there?
Okay. All right. I've never been there. That's Alberta.
It's right near Banff, Alberta, in that area, right near Jasper.
Yeah.
Magnificent.
Yeah, not been there. Yeah. A book you read a long time ago that has had a lasting impact.
That's an easy one. My favorite book of all time is The Source. It's by James Michener. I've read it twice. It's about 1,000 pages. And it's really the story of religion, how it started, why it was maintained. It's a historical novel. It's not nonfiction. It's fiction, but he writes so well.
Right. Okay. You can only golf one golf course again. Only one. Which golf course?
I love playing at Pebble Beach. Monterey Peninsula is my favorite golf place in the world. Even though I'm living in Pinehurst and we play here every day, it's not the same as being on the ocean. So, Pebble.
Right. Last question. Your first celebrity crush?
Jane Fonda. Fonda.
Solid
she
choice.
Was in a movie called, when I was younger, a movie called Tall. I think it was Tall Story. I think it was Anthony Perkins and Jane Fonda, and I was just taken by her in the youthful stages of my life.
Love it. You're off the hot seat. And for those of you watching who are under 30, just Google Jane Fonda. You'll want to know who that is. Bob Mirman, always good to talk to you, my friend. Hit them long and straight.
Thank you, Jeff.
Good,
Have a
sir.
great trip to France. Enjoy it. So
there you go, Ryan. And I know this is something that we've talk about a lot at Shore Consulting, but I know this is really critical for you as well. As we look at the difference between a transaction and an experience, just give us one idea of what elevates a transaction into an experience. There's a lot of things, obviously, but give us one idea of what elevates a transaction into an experience.
Well, boy, there's a lot to unpack on this one too, but I'll just say
Yeah.
this, is that when a customer, whether they purchase or not, leaves a sales environment and they get asked, hey, you went out looking at homes or you went out looking at cars or whatever it is. Did you see anything you liked, or what'd you think? Just those are normal questions that someone would
Right.
ask.
Yeah.
And you can tell if you're in a transaction mode or if you're in an experience mode based off of what the customer answer would be. And if they say, oh, we saw this great home, or this one community had this great incentive, then it was probably transactional. But if they say, oh, well, we met this salesperson and he or she did this with us and we remember this, that then becomes experiential. So my advice to folks is to be thinking along the lines of be story worthy. That's how you become experiential in this is the experience you're providing story worthiness, where you just, all right, now serving number 22, who's next?
Right.
That's boring.
Yeah. And I love that because it transfers over to your experience talking to a salesperson, to a warranty rep, to a builder, to anybody in the organization. It's a great message. Good stuff. Ryan Taft, thank you very much. Bob Mirman, thank you very, very much. We always appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Builder365 podcast. We'll see you next time.